Okay, good morning, everyone. We are on the seventh line. Upliga, the Rabbi Tanchum bar Chaniloi. The Amar Rabbi Tanchum bar Chaniloi. Rabbi Tanchum bar Chaniloi says, "Lo nemar mikra zeh ela keneged masa ego." Which mikra are we talking about? The mikra says, "Ubotsea berech niyetz Hashem." One who praises a compromiser insults Hashem. I.e., you shouldn't compromise. So what is this talking about? So he says, talking about the masa ego. Shenamar, as it says, "Vayar Aaron vayiven mizbeach lefanav," that Aaron saw, and he let them build the Egel Azav. Mara, what did Aaron see, and where did he compromise? Amar Binyamin bar Yefes, Amar Belazar, Ra'a Chor shezavuach lefanav. He saw that Chor was killed in front of his eyes. Amar, so Aaron said, "Ilo shamana luhu hashta, avduli kida avdu bechor." Umekayim bi im yehareg benef b'mikdash Hashem kohen v'navi v'lo havi luhu takanta liolam. Mutav de le'avdu le'egel efshar havi luhu takanta b'tshuva. That's all that Aaron said. Aaron said all of that stuff. So what did Aaron say? Aaron saw that Chor was killed. He said, if I don't let them build the Egel Azav, then they're going to kill me. And if they kill me, then they're going to be Mekayim, the pasuk which says that if a kohen and navi is killed b'mikdash Hashem, there's going to be trouble, and maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu won't actually forgive the Jewish people. Where was a Navi and Kohen killed b'mikdash Hashem and there was trouble? Later on. That's where who? Zechariah. That's where Zechariah was killed. And that's why the beginning of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. So Aaron didn't want that to happen at his time. So he said, better that I let them go ahead and I let them build the Egel Azav, and therefore they'll be able to do tshuva, as opposed to if they kill me, they won't be able to do tshuva. Comes along the pasuk and says, one who praises a compromiser insults Hashem. Even though it sounds like it was a good svara, at the end of the day, says the Gemara, he should not have made that compromise, and he should not have let them build the Egel Azav. V'hani Tanai, this is a machlokas Tanaim, as it says, Poter Mayim Reishis Madon. This is a new pasuk over here. Pasuk says that if you release water, that's the beginning of strife. Poter Mayim Reishis Madon. Gemara understands the beginning of strife. My Darshi Bey, what's the drasha? Kedirav Hamnuna, Damar of Hamnuna, Ain't Chilas Dino Shaladam Nidon Ela Divrei Torah. So first the Gemara learned something else. It says that the first din of a person after 120, which is interesting, because usually we say, what's the first din of a person after 120? Nasata be'amuna. Did you go ahead and did you do masumata be'amuna? But over here the Gemara is only the first din after 120 is whether you learn Torah or not. Shnamar poter mayim reishis madon. The reishis madon, the first din, is on the mayim, which is ein mayim ela Torah. Amar Rafuna says, hay tigra damya litzinura debitka demaya kevan deravach ravach. He learns a little bit differently. Like I was explaining, that releasing water is the beginning of strife. Just like when water comes and it goes into a canal, so as water comes into a canal, it basically makes the canal get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So too by strife, if you don't take it right away, then the strife continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's impossible to go ahead, or not impossible, but very difficult to go ahead and to fix things. Abayik Shishamar, Dami Leguda de Gamla, Kevan de Kam Kam. Similarly, discord is like a plank on a new bridge. When you put down the planks, so they're a little bit shaky in the beginning. Once people start to walk on them over and over again, so they really become set in place. So too when you have fights and discord, in the beginning it's a little bit shaky. Once you really start to get into it and you start to push it more and more, so then it becomes almost impossible to be able to fix. Says the Gemara, Hu dehava ka'amar va'azil. We're going to have a bunch of people who are going to say things and we're going to interpret them. Somebody used to say, quote, Tovia deshama va'adish, Chalfuha bishte meya. Fortunate is the one who hears bad things about himself and doesn't say anything, because 100 misfortunes would have fallen him and they don't happen to him. Amalei Shmuel of Yehuda Kraksiv. Where's the pasuk? We're going to give a statement and then a pasuk. Poter mayim reishis madon. If you're poter the mayim, if you're poter that which people are saying about you, reishis madon reish meya dine. It's like a play on words. Reishis madon reish meya dine. 100 things that would have happened to you are not going to happen because you ignored what people were saying about you. A thief is not killed for 2 or 3 thefts. What does that mean? But he is going to be punished eventually. Don't think that if you got away with it 2 or 3 times, you're going to keep getting away with it. Even if you weren't killed 2 or 3 times, you're eventually going to get punished. Amalei Shmuel of Yehuda Makruksiv, as the pasuk says, Ko Amar Hashem al shlosha pisha Yisrael. Maybe for 3 you'll get away with it. Ve'al arba lo yashivenu. But for the 4th one, you will not get away with it. If there are 7 pits So for a shalom and ish shalom, he won't fall into any of them. V'chad elavid bish. But even if there's just one pit, if you're a person who's a rasha, you'll fall into the one pit. Amar Shmuel, Rabbi Yehuda, Kruksiv, Ki Sheva Yipol Tzadik V'kam, V'rasha Yipol Ba'achas. Interesting. Usually that pasuk is meant to say if a tzaddik falls 7 times, he'll keep getting up. But over here it's saying that if a tzaddik walks and there are 7 pits in front of him, he won't fall into any of them. But a rasha, even if there's just one pit, he'll fall into the pit. Huda v'kamar v'azil. When you come out of beit-din, if beit-din took away your glima, if they took away your stuff, then you should be happy. You should sing. Why should you sing if beit-din takes away your stuff? Because clearly that means that it didn't belong to you. And if it didn't belong to you, then you were holding it as stolen property. And if you're holding it as stolen property, you should be happy when they take it away from you. We are about 10 lines in the wide lines. Amalei Shmuel of Yehuda, Kruksiv. You have a passage that says, "V'gam kol ha'amazel mekamo yavo b'shalom." You'll come b'shalom if you know that beit-din did what they had to do. Huda v'kamer v'azil. Hinema v'dikula shapil. When a woman sleeps, so the basket on her head lowers. Like we spoke about in Pirkei Avos yesterday. When a person is lazy, so the quality of the person's work suffers. Amalei Shmuel Yehuda Kruksiv batzaltim yamcha hamikarev. That if you're lazy, then you will not have good work. The man who I trusted got up and stood against me. He got up, the person that I trusted. Be careful. When we were in love, when our love was strong, we could lay together on a bed. This is so true, even the size of the width of a sword, a tiny bed. But now that our love is not so strong, a bed of 60 amos is not big enough for us. Amar Rav Yehuda says, this is like a pasuk, that when the Jewish people and God are getting along, so then they're very close. And when they're not, then they can't even sleep in a bed that's 60 amos big. Where do we see this? Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, when the Jewish people are doing the right thing, I can come down and I can talk to you right from on top of the kaporas. How high was the kaporas? Vitanya, Aron, Tisha, Vekaporas, Tefacharei, Kanasara. So when the Jewish people were doing what they're supposed to be doing, Kadosh Baruch Hu would come down when their love was strong and he would speak to Moshe from 10 tefachim from the ground. Uchsiv, but then it says when they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, V'abayis Sherbana Melech Shlomo Lashem. We know that the bias was Shishima Ma'arko V'esim Rachbo Shloshima Makomaso. It was 30 amos high, and yet Ulvasok Siv Akomar Hashem, when they weren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, Hashamayim Kisiva Arz Adom Raglai Eza Bayis Shativnuli. I'm going to stay up in Shamayim. So when they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, because Baruch comes all the way down. He can't come under 10 tefachim, but he comes all the way down to 10 tefachim. When they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, even 30 amos is not going to be low enough for him to come down. My mashma. Dehai lo saguru lishna deknushehu. Something new. So we said, by the word lo saguru, we said that a student should not withhold his opinion if he thinks his Rebbe made an error. So where do we see that lo saguru means to withhold? Amar of Nachman Amar Kravi, yain lo tishta velo sagor. To withhold is the same thing to gather, to hold for yourself. So we're going to bring 3 psukim that show that the word sagor means to withhold, means to gather. So yain lo lishta velo tagor, you should not withhold it for yourself. Ravacha bar Yaakov Amar Mihacha, tachin b'kayitz lachma, you should prepare in the kayitz your lechem. Agra b'katzir machla, you should gather, withhold in the katzir machal, you should save some. Ravacha bar Ravika Amar Mihacha, oger b'kayitz ben maskil, a smart son gathers or withholds. But again, we see that the word lo sagor means to withhold or gather. A student should not withhold or gather information when he feels that his Rebbe made a mistake, even though in general he's not supposed to speak up in front of his Rebbe, as we said the other day, shalosh persos. Amar Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Rabbi Yonasan, kol dayin shendan din emes la miso mashra shchina b'Yisrael shnemar Elohim nitzav badas el b'kerev Elohim yishbot v'chol dayin she'eno dan din emes la miso gorim l'shchina shetistalek b'Yisrael shnemar mishod aniyim en katsev yonim ata kum yomar Hashem. If you bring in a right judgment, then you make God come settle with the Jewish people. If you bring in a false judgment, you make God go away from the Jewish people. Amar Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Rabbi Yonasan, kol dayin shenotam mamon mizev v'notin lezeh shelo kedin, kadosh baruch hu notam mimenu nafsho. Now, it might not be literally that he kills him, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you do it on purpose. If you make the wrong mistake, if you make a mistake in the judgment, so then kadosh baruch hu is quote unquote notal mimenu nafsho. Shnemar al tigzol dal kidalhu. Don't steal from a poor person because he's poor. Ve'al tidakei ani b'shar, should not oppress an ani b'shar. Ki Hashem yariv rivam, Hashem will be riv rivam v'kaves koveim nafash. and he'll rob the kovei menafesh. If you go ahead and you paskin wrong, he will take away your nefesh. Yes?
If the judge paskins wrong, then he realizes his mistake. Can he go back and correct it?
I'm not 100% sure when he can. We said that he's chayiv to pay in certain circumstances, but we said in other cases he's not chayiv to pay. It sounded like from the Gemara back then by a mumche who makes a mistake and he doesn't need to pay. It sounds like he couldn't go ahead and change his judgment once he does it. Yeah, is there another question? That's it? From Shmuel bar Nachman Rabbi Yonasan, the olam yira dayin atzma kilu cherev muneches lo bein achosav. Usually we say there's a cherev on your tzavarav, on your neck. Over here it's saying that when you're judging, you can see it as if a sword is sitting between your thighs. Begehenim bechus lo mitachtav. Pretty intense. You should look like Gehenim is underneath you if you make a mistake. Shnei, where do we see this? He named me Tato Shali Shlomo. What's the mita of Shlomo? The Beis HaMikdash. Shishim Gaborim Saviv La Migibrei Yisrael. Who sat in the Beis HaMikdash? The Sanhedrin. Kulam Achuzei Cherev Milumdei Milchama. Ish Charbo Al Yerecho Mipach HaBailot. The Sanhedrin should look at it as their Cherev is on their Yerech, from the fear of Leilos. What's Leilo? Mipach Shal Gehenim Shedom El Leilos. Gehenim is like Leilos, so when you're on the Sanhedrin, you should be careful and afraid that of the pachad of Gehenim if you make a mistake. Darash Rav Yosef Itema Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. My dichsiv. What does it mean when it says Beis David Komar Shem Dino La Boker Mishpat? That the din is in the Boker Vitzilo Gazel Miyad Oshek. You should save the Gazel from the oppressed. V'chiba Boker Danin V'chol Hayom Danin. Is it true that we only judge during the day, in the morning? Ela Im Borer L'cha Davar Kaboker Amrehu V'Im Lav Al Tomrehu. If the judgment, if the ruling is as clear to you as the Boker, then as a judge you should say it. But if you're not 100% clear as you are on a sunny day, not a day like today, but on a sunny day, if you can look outside and it's clear as day, then Lamaisa, you can go ahead and give the judgment. Rav Chia bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yonasan, he says, Mehacha from here, Emor L'chach Machosiyat. Where do we have this? 2 days ago we had this about Rav, where we said that he was the son of the sister, even though he wasn't really the son of the sister. We called him the son of the sister because Achosi, Chachma is called Achosi. Now we have another use of the pasuk where it says, "Im bar l'cha davar ka'achoscha she'asur l'cha umrehu." If you, the judge, are as sure about the din as you are that your sister is asur to you, then you should say it. V'im lav al tomrehu. And if not, you should not say it. Very interesting comparison. Amr v'Shua ben Levi, asara sheyoshin badin, kol taloi b'tzavar kulan. When there are 10 sitting badin, a chain is hanging on the neck of all of them. It doesn't just mean when there are 10 badin, even when there are 10 badin. But for sure, when there are 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 bedin, they should look at it like there's a chain hanging on their neck. Pshita, it's obvious. Lo tzricha el talmid hayoshev lifnei rabo. Now, this is for a talmid who's sitting in front of his rebbe. He should look at it as if there's a chain on his neck, i.e., even if he's not part of the beit-din, he should look at it as if he has a responsibility to speak up should the rebbe make a mistake. Rafuna kiyava asi dina lekamei. When Rafuna had a din in front of him, michnaf umaisi asar rabbanim meiraf. He was a smart guy. What would he do? He would go to the base medrash. He would get 10 other people to come paskin with him. Why? Amar kiyeche delimitayin shiba mikishur. In case I make a mistake, so I'll be able to share the blame and the responsibility with the other people. Ravashi kiyava asi trifta lekamei. Similarly, when Ravashi was asked to paskin on a treifa, what did he do? Machlin v'maisi lekula tavche demasa machsia. He would go in and he would get all of the butchers in the town of Machsia. Amar, he said, Shiba Mikishura. Just like, I'd rather not paskin by myself. This way, if I have all the other butchers and they say it's kosher as well, then if I happen to be wrong, I'll only get 1/11 of the blame.
That's the way it works.
I guess so. If I ever ask you, Mendel, to come to beit-din with me, you'll know why. Yeah.
When it says all the other butchers, was Rav Ashi himself a butcher by trade?
I don't know. I'm not sure. It doesn't sound like all the other butchers. It says, Umaisu lekulu tifche. He went to get all of the tifchen. Ki asur Rav Dimi Amar Darash Rav Nachman Bar Kohen. So when Rav Dimi came, he said, Rav Nachman Bar Kohen used to jarish us the following: My dichsiv melech b'mishpat yamid aretz v'ish trumos yarsena. A melech b'mishpat will make the land stay, and a man of gifts will overthrow the land. Im dayin domel a melech sheino tzarech leklum yamid aretz. If a dayin is like a melech who doesn't need anything, he'll be yamid aretz. Im domel a kohen shemechazer b'veis hagranos. If he's like a kohen who gets food from the granos, yeher sena, he'll ruin the world. Why? Not because he's going to take bribes. That's what I would have thought. Pashup Shad is that he's going to take bribes. They explain that no, it means because if he needs to ask somebody every single time he has a question, so eventually he's going to stop asking and he's going to be paskening just on his own. So you don't have to know everything, but you got to know something, because if you need to ask somebody every single time, then Lamaisa, eventually you're going to stop asking and you're going to be paskening the wrong thing. In the house of the Nesiah, for some reason they appointed a judge who was not fit. Amar le Yehuda bar Nachmani metorgamana diresh lakish. So the Nasi said to Yehuda bar Nachmani, who happened to be a metorgaman, kum ale b'amara, go and be the metorgaman for this dayan. I.e., he doesn't really need a metorgaman, but if you're the metorgaman, you'll listen to what he's saying and you'll figure out whether he's paskening wrong or not. This guy's a smart guy. He knew he didn't know anything, so he refused to talk when somebody else was listening to him. Pasach v'amar. So Yehuda got up and said, Hoy omer la'etz hakitza, uri la'even domim. Woe is the one who says to a wood to get up, tells a non-moving rock to awaken. Who Yored, that type of guy should be paskening. This person is covered with gold and silver, but he has no breath of wisdom in him. I.e., he's trying to get the guy to take the hint that he shouldn't be paskening by saying, quoting a pasuk that says, this person has no breath of wisdom in him. Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to eventually make the person who appoints people that don't know anything pay up. Shnamar v'Hashem behechal kadsho. Has mi panav kol aretz. The whole aretz will be silent from him for appointing people who don't know anything. Amr shlakish kol hamam midayin she'eno hagun. Not only will you be mipara from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but if you're mamid a dayin who's not right, ki'ilu notea sheira b'Yisrael. It's like planting avodah-zarah in Yisrael. Shnamar shoftim v'shodrim titein lecha. You should put shoftim v'shodrim v'samichlei lo tita lecha sheira koletz. But those shoftim v'shodrim should not be like an asherah. Not only that, Amr Ravashi, it's one thing to choose a bad person. If you choose a bad person when you have better people to choose from, other candidates, not only is it like you planted on Shera, it's ki'ilu natu eitzam mizbeach. Shenamar eitzam mizbeach Hashem elokecha. So, don't appoint the wrong person, especially if you have other people to choose from. You shouldn't make Eloi Kesev Eloi Hazav. Eloi Kesev Eloi Hazav hu of the Hada 8 Shari. That implies that you can make avodah-zarah out of wood. Ravashi, no. Eloha haba b'shvil kesef, veloha haba b'shvil zav. It doesn't mean it's talking about avodah-zarah here. That's literal, but it's talking about you shouldn't get judges who are appointed because of bribes of gold and bribes of silver. Following happened to Rav. When he used to go to beit-din, he would say the following. Just like when we open up a Gemara, so many people say the hiratzon in the beginning. They ask a Kadosh Baruch Hu, or when they do a mitzvah, they say Hareini Muchan Mizuman or Yehi Ratzon. So he would have his own Yehi Ratzon before he went into judge. What would he say? He would say the following: Biraus Nafshe Lakat Lanafik. I'm going in to me, and I might get killed if I make a mistake. Utzvi Beise Lesu Avid. And while I'm here, I'm not being able to take care of my house. V'Reikon Lebeise Ayil. And not only that, I'm going to go home empty because I don't get paid anything. Ulavai shetei bia kiyatzi, and halavai, I should go the way that I went in. I should go out without making any mistakes. Kiavi chazi, when Rav would see ambuha abasre, when he would see a crowd of scholars following, he didn't want to get haughty, so he said, Amar im yale la shamayim sio kigelelo la netzach yoved. He used to say that. If his stature rises, he would quote the pasuk that if a person's stature rises, he'll eventually perish like galal, like waste, because he was worried again that he would get haughty. Furthermore, Marzutra Chasida Kehavim Mekat Fele B'Shapsa. Marzutra Chasida, they would carry him on their shoulders to the drasha. Pretty cool. So when they would carry him to his drasha B'Shabda Derigla, right, by the regel, they would go ahead and they would give they didn't give a drasha every Shabbos. They would give a drasha near the regalim. Amar Hachi, he would say, Kilola Olam Chosen, Vimnezer Lidor Vador. Riches are not forever, and the crown does not endure for all time. Darish Bar Kafra, Minah Milsad Amar Rabbanan have a Mesunim Badin. Where do we know that we should be patient Badin, that a judge should not judge right away? Tichsiv, because it says, Lo Sa'aleb Ma'alos, a Kohen should not go up on steps to the Mizbeach. V'samichlei, and it says, Ve'ela Mishpatim. These are the Mishpatim. So just like a Kohen should not run up the Mizbeach, a mishpatim, a shofet, should not run to paskin the halacha. Amr Eliezer, minayin ledain shelo yifsa roshe am kodesh. We know that people sit sometimes down. I never knew where this was from, right? You sit down and you say, don't step over other people. So it used to be that when they would go to the drasha, they wouldn't necessarily sit on seats. They would sit on the floor listening to the drasha. So how do you know that the Rav, how do you know that anybody really, a dayan, but kavachom, a regular person, should not step over other people who are sitting there listening to the drasha? Shenamar lo taleb b'malos. People that are there listening to mishpatim, you should not go ahead and taleb and malod. You should not step over them. Interesting, Joshua. Asher tasim, asher talamdemi ba'ilei. When it says ve'ela mishpatim asher tasim, what does it mean? These are the mishpatim that you should place before them. These are the mishpatim that you should teach them. Says Gemara, you're right. Elam mishpatim asher tilamdeim. You should teach them. Why did it say tasim? To teach something else? Because there are certain movable items that have to be placed in order to judge. What are the movable items by judgment? Amar of Yirmiyah v'Tamer of Chia Barabba. Elu klei dayanin. The dayanin has certain kalim that they use to judge. What does that mean? Rafuna kavinafik ladina amar hachi. Afikuli mani chanusai. When Rafuna would go to judge, he said, go take the things that I need, the kalim that I need. What kalim do judges need? Makal, uritzua, v'shufra, v'sandala. They need a makal and a ritzua. They need a stick and they need a strap. What do judges need a stick and a strap for? For malchus, different types of malchus. Shufra. What do they need a horn for? A shofar?
Explanation.
So I would have said for Yovel, but
It says excommunication.
it says excommunicate. It. The article is now referred to as it. The article says excommunication. So they would take a shofar for Yovel and also for excommunication. When they would put somebody in Chayr and they would blow a shofar. V'sandala, what would they need a sandal for? For chalitza. So ve'ela mishpatim asher tasim lifneim. You're right. I should say ve'ela mishpatim asher tilamneim. But he's learning something else. He's teaching on a deeper level. Ve'ela mishpatim asher tasim lifneim. That shoftim have to have certain movable objects as well. Tasim, things you have to place in front of them. These 4 items you need to place in front of a judge so that he can go ahead and do his judgment correctly.
No gavel, right?
No gavel. No.
Well, you could use the shofar.
Vatzavet shoftechem ba'esahi. Should command your shoftim at that time. Amar v'Yochanan. Keneged makal u'ritzua tehei zaris. You should be careful with the makal and the ritzua. Shamoa bein achechem ushvatetem. You should listen between your brothers and then judge. Amar Chanina ashara lebezin shlo yishma divrei baldin kodem shevo baldin chavero. You should listen between your brothers. Don't listen to one side before the other guy gets there. You need to wait until both parties are in court in order to listen to the sadim of both parties. And not only does Beis Din have a responsibility to wait till both Bali Din are there, Ashara lebaldin, the Baldin himself has an Ashara shelo yatin devar v'dayin kodem shevo baldin chavero. He can't even go ahead and say his case even if Beis Din lets him. Kari beinami, because it doesn't say shamoa bein achechem. You can also read it shma bein achechem. Not only can you not listen, you cannot make it be heard. So even if Beis Din is willing to do the wrong thing and listen to one guy before the other guy gets there, the other guy himself has responsibility not to do so. Rav Kahana Mar Me'acha lo tisa, should not be tisa, lo tasi. You should not go ahead and you should not present / accept a false report. And there's a greater chance that it will be a false report if in fact you let the guy speak when the other guy is not there. Ushvatetem tzedek. You should be shofet tzedek. Amr Reish Lakish. Sadak es hadin v'achar kach chadcheyu. Only make sure that the verdict is sadak is right first, and only then can you render it. Zak the Gemara bein ish ubein achiv. When you render judgment, it needs to be bein ish ubein achiv uvein gero. The Gemara of Darshans over here bein ish ubein achiv. Amr Yuda filu bein bayis la'aliyah. What does that mean? It means when I'm splitting stuff as Beis Din, a Yerusha. So one might say, well, there's a house, there's a downstairs and an upstairs, so you take the downstairs and you take the upstairs. No. Bein ishu bein achiv, it needs to be 100% glot. Therefore, if you're going to split it up, either you give the bottom to one and the top to the other, and if the bottom is worth more, then the bottom guy's got to pay the top guy, or your mom is split it down the middle and each guy gets. So the point is that when they're shofei, when they go ahead and they judge for Yerusha, it needs to be 100% glot, and they need to get exactly the same amount. Uben Gero, Pashup Shad as a stranger, but in here it's not learning Pashup Shad as a stranger, it's learning Gero as Tagar. Household items for living. Amar Yehuda, similarly, when you split up a Yerusha afilu bein tanor lekirayim, between different types of stove. It's not you take one stove, you take the other. If one of the stoves is more expensive, is better than the other one, the one who got the better one needs to pay the guy who got the one that wasn't as good. Lo takiru panim b'mishva. You should not recognize panim b'mishva. Yehuda Amer, lo takirehu. You should not recognize, i.e., if you recognize one guy, you should not favor the one that you recognize. Rabbi Lazar Amer, the opposite, but the same idea. Lo tidnachrehu. If you don't like somebody, you shouldn't make them into a nachri, into a stranger, and dafka paskin against them. So you shouldn't favor one that you like, and you shouldn't disfavor one that you dislike. Says the Gemara, ushbizchne de Rav. There was a host of Rav, also lekami ledina. So he came before Rav for a din. Amar lo, he said to Rav, lav ushbizchne at. So I guess he was sort of honest and says, were you not my guest? Amar lo, Rav said in, yes, I recognize you as my host. Amar lei, so the guy said to Rav, perfect. Dina isli, I have a din, perfect, time for you to pay me back. Amar lei, he said, pasilna lecha ledina, I can't go ahead and paskin for you. Tosfos points out, marchakaya atzma v'almin adin lo mifsal. Just because he was a host for Rav doesn't mean that Rav is puzzled to paskin. But Rav didn't want to put himself in this situation because lest he might have a little bit of a reason to pay the guy back and favor him. Amar le Rav Rav Kana. So Rav turned to Rav Kana and says, Pog Daine, you go ahead and judge this case. Chazid dehava ka gaiz bay. So Rav Kahana saw that this guy was very confident that he was going to win because he was connected to Rav, and Rav's going to put in a good word, and Rav Kahana is going to listen to Rav. So Rav Kahana puts it right down to bed, and he says, Amar le itzaita tzaita. If you're willing to accept my judgment, then I will give you my judgment. V'lo mafikna lecha Rav meonach. And if not, then I'm going to excommunicate you, and I will take Rav totally out of the picture. Don't think that just because you have a connection to Rav, will you be able to get a special judgment in this case.